Welcome to almost the end of January 2025. Today we're going to talk about reading goals. Should we set them? What good are they? How they might not be good sometimes, and just some overall ideas to have on reading goals. If you like the video, thumbs up below, all that YouTube stuff. Best way to support the channel is to actually become a member. curtismchale.ca/membership. Let's dive into reading goals for 2025. So we're actually, said coming to the end of January, and I'm sure some of you are already looking at reading goals and thinking, wow, I'm way far behind. This year, actually, as in most years, I've actually started off very strong with 8, almost 9 books read so far in January, which is great for me, but I know that I taper off, especially in the summer, as I do a lot more riding and just less reading because I'm spending my time out on my bike. Now, when it comes to the topic of reading goals, it can be good, which we'll start with, and it can be bad, which we'll come to in a minute. And I get the impetus for wanting to start a reading goal. Ultimately, you want to read more, and you figure that a number of books read reading goal is the way to do it, because that's what you see everyone do, right? That's what Goodreads pushes. It says, hey, set your reading goal every year, and then you get a little badge, and you can see your friends' badges, and you can see, how they're doing, and you can even get into a bit of a competition, which can spur you on, which is can be a good thing. For years, my reading goal was 52 books a year. I think I topped out in between 70 and 80, highest at 90, probably. 70, 80 was my average. But then 2 years ago, 2023, I did 38, which was my lowest. I wasn't unhappy with that until I really looked at the number and said, wow, 38, that's like so far. And I even questioned myself on whether I was a real reader, whether I should be talking about books, because my number was low and lower than it had been, lower than lots of other people you see. Right? The beating yourself up over a low number or a number lower than other people is one of the bad things to setting a reading goal. When I looked at my friends' challenges in the light of that, I thought, boy, can I really talk about books? Is that a valid thing? Should people listen to me when I'm only reading 38 books, which is actually, honestly, still a lot. Now I bounced back into 2024 with 48 books, which is, again, good. None of my numbers are bad by any means. In fact, it's something like the average person reads like 2 books a year, 1 book a year. It's not a lot. So realistically, if I read 1 book a month, I'm still doing, I'll say, far better. I'm reading far more than the average, because I'm not sure that better is the right word there. This is where we get into the problem with reading goals, because seeing your friend's goal can leave you chasing this goal at the expense of good reading, right? So good reading will say reading for enjoyment if it's fiction, and just really getting to immerse in the story, really getting to take the time that it needs. With nonfiction, right? Taking your notes, diving in, digging in, looking at other aspects of it, doing other research. So when you set this reading goal, especially the book a week reading goal, it can stop us from making good choices with our reading, right? We may look at the latest Brandon Sanderson tome, which is, 1,300 pages, Wind and Truth, I believe it's called, which I'm reading slowly, and think, boy, this is a big book. This is not going to look good on my numbers, right? Whereas if I read 2 or 3 easy books, say less to them, less pages, 600 books, or 600 words, or 600 pages, then that's, essentially 2. I could read 2 of those in the time it would take me to read 1 Brandon Sanderson book. So we stop reading those. We, in fact, choose books that we wouldn't choose. We wouldn't dive into the big, deep thinking books because they're going to affect our numbers. And this is, again, the bad side of a reading goal. Now, I kind of think the worst and most insidious aspect of it is the performative nature of it. It's sometimes the comparison trap of comparing yourself to your friend who, I compared myself to a friend years ago, and now I can look back almost 10 years later and say, wait, she didn't have kids. She doesn't have kids. She, worked for herself as well, just like me. But she also wasn't training for ultra marathons at the time, and, spending all that time running, spending time with young, a baby, a toddler, and a child, right? Didn't have that. And so when I looked at her reading, she had lots of time to do it. And so she had read more than me, and I kept feeling bad for it. But this performative reading goal, for me to say I read 52 books or whatever the number is, it's in some ways a performance, right? Just as I've talked a while ago about consumption in the anti-library, where a shelf of book reads is in some ways a performative act of saying, look at all these books I've read, it's so amazing, as opposed to the anti-library idea where it's a list of all the books or a showing of all the books that I haven't read. Here's all the things I don't know. I think there's, again, good things to keeping books that you like, that you're going to reread, and as long as it's not that performative nature where you're trying to show off all the stuff you've done. Again, that's with the number of books as well. If it is simply for performance, to say I read a book a week and now I'm in some elite club, then that's simply for performance. That's not something that is ultimately benefiting you long term in many ways. Now, my final big issue with performative book goals or book a week goals is that it's easy to fall into a failure state. So say you read 12 books one year and you say, for my next year I want to double it, I'll read 24, and that's a good goal, that's fine, but then you only read 20 and you failed. because you put your book goal at a number of books completed, not at knowledge, not at anything else, but at a number of books. And that's where we fall into the trap of failure. Actually, like yearly themes from Cortex, which is it's all linked in the blog post, which will be linked to at the end of the video. Where yearly themes would say, my yearly theme is to read more. So technically, if I read 13 books, that's more, right? If I read 12 really big, hard books, that's more. I spent more time, more effort on my reading, which is how I'd like to see goals ultimately for most people. Read more, do something, and decide what that is for you, right? Some of the performative aspects of a reading goal is also saying I read no comics, I read no graphic novels, or people saying it doesn't count because you read a graphic novel, because you were doing an audiobook. Ultimately, your yearly goal, your reading goal should be for you, something that you enjoy. So how about some alternatives to book goals? Since we're going to say it's not to read a specific number of books, what can it be instead? To start with, why don't you just try to aim for, say, 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. I say 5 days a week because I can sit in my office and starting my day most days, and I can read for 30 minutes. Whereas on the weekends, it's actually fairly hard. I get up, I ride my bike, I get my kids to figure skating, get my kids to music, I get my kids to lots of other things, and I often don't have time, especially on Saturdays, often on Sundays as well, to sit quietly and read for a while. It's just not there. So expecting myself to perform that on those days is just setting myself up for failure. Another goal could be to read a specific number of pages in a day, say 10 pages a day, 5 days a week, which comes up to 2,600 pages, depending on the type of books you're reading. Let's say 4 to 5 books a year, which again isn't a bad number. Really, any book is a good number. But setting that page goal, or I've seen chapter goals as well. I think it's what Cal Newport does, 1 chapter a day, can be a better way. Because then even if you're reading a long book, right, really long one, you can say, well, I did read my 2,600 pages this year. Because even though I read this hard book, it's fine. Or this really long book, it's fine. It's not affecting my overall number for the year. Finally, you can also do it as an output goal. So I write, I do videos. So instead of saying I want to read X number of books per year, I could say I want my reading to fuel my writing, so that I produce something every week would be another one to do. All right, so I produce a video based on the thoughts that are prompted from my reading in the week. That's another better goal for you to have for your reading in a year. And again, to divorce it from what anyone else is doing, do what works for you. Ultimately, reading should be about your personal enjoyment, your personal betterment. You can enter the lives of other people, right? I've never been, a woman suffering from addiction, living on a very tiny island in Orkney, but I have read that book by Annie Liptrot. Again, I'm not a woman, but I have a better understanding about income inequality by reading The Cost of Being a Girl, or how reading about misogyny and knowing how women are minimized in society by reading Invisible Women, right? All these books will be linked in past videos. So the good thing about reading is it can take you places that you're unable to inhabit on your own. In my own life, I can't inhabit many scenarios outside of being honestly a very privileged white dude. So what I want to do with my reading in 2025 is just try and expand the lives that I can try to understand, expand my empathy, expand my understanding of other people, and not necessarily worry about the number of books I read, but worry about the content I can produce, the stuff I can put out there in the world to help make it a better place, to increase the empathy of everyone. That's it. If you liked the video, thumbs up. YouTube stuff, subscribe, bells, you know what it is. Otherwise, become a member, curtismchale.ca/membership. Have an awesome day.